support your local library. My name is Lydia Sherrer, and I am a Kentucky local. It's about 2 hours north of Louisville. I write urban fantasy, kind of Harry Potter-esque, and I've been publishing for probably 3 or 4 years. Excuse me while I turn this alarm off. There we go.
Time for the panel.
What? Well, actually, that's telling me I'm late for the panel. So I'm glad I turned that off since I'm here. And we'll just go down the line and each one of us introduce ourselves, and then we'll open up to questions. And if nobody has any questions, I've got things we can talk about. We'll be good.
Okay, I'm Raye Wagner, and I write young adult fantasy, Greek mythology, fantasy, witches, dragons. I like it all. All of it. Not necessarily together. Usually not together.
I don't know, mythology and dragons, like it could be like a clash, like which one would win? Which one would win?
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
I mean, Sphinx versus dragon, that'd be pretty cool.
See, like now you're gonna give me another idea. I'm gonna be like, I have an idea. Yeah,
that's what we do. That's
is
what
what we
friends do. Give you ideas.
Thank you for that.
And now I get 20% royalty.
I'm Becca Hillburn. I do Kidlit comics. I've been in a bunch of comic anthologies. I primarily focus on sweet, warm-hearted comics set in Southeast Louisiana, because that's where I'm from. And I've been making comics. I was trying to figure it out because I started when I was 13, and I'm 32 now. So I've been doing it for a minute.
For
a minute, just a little.
Just 1 minute.
I'm David, Joel Stevenson.
Hi, David.
I go by Joel simply
Joel
because
Stevenson.
if you Google David Stevenson, you're gonna find a guy who loves cats. And cats are fine, but that's not that guy. I write lots of things, I guess science fiction dystopian and a insecure, socially anxious superhero from just south of Nashville in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
He's a Murfreesboro.
Yep. Yep. I thought somebody said hello over there. I don't know if they're talking to us. Hello.
Yeah. My name is Mark Wandrey. I write military science fiction, space opera, and zombie apocalypse. I've been writing science fiction since I was about that young man's age right there. I read a book by, yes, you.
What's behind it?
I read a book by Robert Heinlein called The Rolling Stones. It was a young adult book that he wrote. He wrote a number of them. And he didn't want to write them. He just wanted to sell books. And his publisher said, write some young adult stuff. And he goes, oh, really? And he actually wrote some of the best young adult science fiction that's ever been written. And when I read that book, I decided I'm going to be a writer. It only took about 40 years, but I actually finally got there. So I've been professionally publishing now for 18 years, and as of about 6 months ago, I was a full-time professional author. I quit my day job, and this is what I do.
Yeah, living the dream.
You are our mentor.
Living
You
the
are-
dream.
Living the
yeah.
dream. Nice.
My wife said I can live the dream as long as the rent gets paid.
Yes, as long as the rent gets paid. Nice. So real quick, just before we talk about anything else, do you guys have any questions or anything you'd like to hear us talk about? And it's okay if you don't. I just like to open it up, because some people come, they're like, they're all ready with their questions.
Otherwise, we're going to start asking y'all questions.
I would say he raised his hand first. You got to be faster than that. Yes, sir. What's going on? What can we answer for you?
Would you talk about the gods and mythical creatures?
Mythical creatures? Okay. So how about our favorite mythical creature and why? And we're going to start down there with Mark, because I know you're going to need like 10 minutes to pick your
Totally
favorite
get called for the guy who doesn't write about that stuff.
But you got to have like a favorite from, your childhood or something. Favorite
I mean,
mythical
everybody and
creature?
their brother loves dragons and stuff like that. But I've actually been a big fan of the mythos stuff built around the wyverns, which are kind of related to dragons. They're similar, but they're not quite the same. Because most of the dragon mythos come from all kinds of different religions, different countries, different people. They put all their bits and pieces into it, and what we see now is kind of a combination of all put together. Traditional dragons, if you look at them, they don't have 4 legs. They don't have 2 arms, 2 legs, and wings. They have 2 legs and wings. But modern day, they've kind of evolved in this thing. They have arms and wings. So I'm like, how does it have 6 limbs? There's nothing on the planet that has 6 limbs. It doesn't have chitin. So the wyverns are like that, similar, except they have like a scorpion's tail. They're really, they're very strange creatures. And I always were fascinated by those, and then I got into D&D and things got completely carried away. Your turn.
That's a hard question, because I don't know that I have a specific, one favorite thing. I just like possibilities. And so, to me, the best thing is to look at something and imagine it as something different. And so to think of something like, well, there's a dog and there's a dude. What if you put them together? Well, now you have a werewolf.
You have dog dude.
You have dog dude, which is
a great
number 2 in this. Yeah.
Dog dude.
So yeah, I love possibilities. When I was a kid, I used to love just anything about monsters or aliens or just anything that you didn't see on a daily basis. And so that's why I started writing about stuff like that.
Thank David.
Oh, gee whiz. So when I was younger, it had to have been like sea mythical creatures, so like the Kraken or the Leviathan, I thought was really cool. Now that I'm older, it's more human monsters are kind of my jam. So like Cyclopses are cool and witches are pretty interesting. Minotaurs are.
I was just thinking that. We're on the same
When
wavelength.
you get a little bit older, House of Leaves is a very excellent book that's going to scare you. You can read it now.
Scare
It's going to scare you.
So read that.
Read that
Before bed. Thanks,
right
Laura.
before bed.
I'm glad
Your
we-
mom will thank me.
I like them all. I like all of it. So I started, I actually had a picture, that's the picture at my table that was painted by an artist that I knew of a girl that was a sphinx, and I had that in my house for a long time because I'm very old. And my husband kept saying, you should write a book, you should write a book, you should write a book. And I love to read, and I had a successful career as a nurse practitioner. And I thought, I don't have time to write a book. I don't have time to write a book. And my boys were young. They were 2 and 4. And I had this idea for a story about a girl who turned into a sphinx. And I called my sister because she was a creative writing major. And I'm like, this is a really good story. You should write it. And she said, it's your story. You should write it. And I went, no, I don't know how to write. I have no training in writing. And she said, no, you should just write the first 10 pages and send me the first 10 pages. And I'll tell you if it's any good. And I was like, oh, okay, I can 10 pages. I can do 10 pages. And I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote. And the first book took me 6 years to write.
Wow.
Long time. And then the second book took a lot less. And then the third book took a lot less. And actually my son and I were just laughing because he was counting how many books do you have out and how many books will be out. So by the end of this month, we'll have 9 books out.
Wow.
Almost 10, and yeah. So.
I'm on 14, and the one I just finished last night took us 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, you just get faster and you write cleaner, and but I like them all. I like dragons. I like Greek mythology. So this series has a sphinx, it has a minotaur, it has a chimera, it has the fates, it's got lots and lots, and it's got all of the Greek pantheon, and then I have witches and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and Jinn in another series that is out, and then
What is that? What's the series?
it's Fire of Magic and Shadow. No, Magic. I don't even know. My brain is just all that. So it's Magic of Fire and Shadows is the first one. Magic of Fire and Shadows, and the second one is Magic of Talisman and Blood.
Are you co-authoring that with somebody?
That one's Rita Stradling.
Okay.
And this is Kelly. And
Yeah, I would say I think I've met Kelly at a convention. But anyway, sorry, not to distract.
No, that's totally fine. Obviously, I'm easily distractible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it all. If you say, oh, what do you think about da-da-da-da-da? So literally, my son, we were driving, and my son, Jacob, turned to me and he was like, you should write a story about demons in the desert that come out of the sand and will annihilate a village. I'm like, oh, that's
Wow.
a great idea. So I got out my phone and I dictated the idea, and yeah, so that's
Dictating
next.
is very useful.
Oh, thank you.
I actually worked on my latest book a little bit on the way down from Louisville. I was dictating in the middle of my 5th book for that series. I really enjoy non-traditional mythology. I loved Roman and Greek mythology when I was growing up. But then I got into like Aesop's fables and more like Grimm's fairy tales, and that led me to now I'm a huge fan of Native American mythology and Norse mythology. I love Indians and Vikings, and I actually have a book where I have a society that's basically Indians and Vikings, like half and half, sort of like half and half. And it's like a Viking society, but they live more like a natural Native American life with, they're very connected to the earth and everything. But one of my favorite series is Skinwalker by Faith Hunter, an urban fantasy series where the main character is a Cherokee skinwalker, and that's different from like were creatures, like werewolves and werecats and stuff, in that they are actually the protectors of their tribes, and they can change into different animals to protect their tribe. And like, I kind of like going for the mythology that not a lot of people talk about, that's not as popular, because it's really fascinating the kinds of things you can learn. I also have researched a lot about ancient Mesopotamian gods and mythology for this series. And because I love cuneiform, and I love like the most ancient of societies, which is in the cradle of life of Mesopotamia. So yeah, if you're looking for mythologies to read about, Roman and Greek is great, but go beyond that. Kind of see what other kinds of mythologies and societies you can learn about through their different myths. So that was a really great. Yeah, and then make up your own. That was a really great question, Bud. Thanks so much. Did you have a question too, sweetie?
Yes. What are the steps to getting published? Like, how did you find your publishers, and how do you get there?
Okay, that's
Cry for
a
a long
really,
time.
No, don't tell her that.
Wonder what you're doing with your life.
Shush, David. I will start that on this end and preface it with there are a couple different ways you can get published. The two main routes are going to be traditional publishing and independent publishing. With traditional, you might go to a small press where the process may be a little bit different from like the big traditional publishers. And then the self-publishing route is just a really long and hard but very fun process of teaching yourself how to do a lot of things. With Amazon, you have a free opportunity to publish whatever you write. You could be super unprofessional and put up like in like a document and throw it on Amazon. It'll look
Which
terrible,
is about half of it
But
right now.
but you can do that, or you can take the time. It probably took me 2-3 years of doing research and stuff. I'm an independent publisher, and I learned how to do it right, how to look professional. I looked at what do traditional published books look like. What is in the front? What do they have in the back? Like, where do they get their cover artists? Where do they get? So I kind of researched all that and figured out how to hire the right people and how to manage it myself. And so I'm all independently published. I don't submit to anybody. I don't get anybody's permission to publish my stuff. I am my own boss, and I do what I want. And there's a lot of indie. Do any of you all have a traditionally published book? No, I think you've got some traditional,
I'm in
you're in
some
anthologies, yeah. So we've got I think some of us have stuff in like anthologies and groups of other writers getting together, but we're mostly indie authors. I prefer indie publishing, just because it's faster and easier, but there's definitely something to be said for getting a traditional publishing deal. It's just a lot harder, and it might take a lot longer than just doing stuff yourself. But let's each of us maybe talk about what your steps were to doing your own publishing, and then maybe for people who've you've been in traditionally published anthology stuff, speak a little bit about that process. Right.
So I actually met with an agent, had a manuscript critique last month. And
Hey, high five.
well, I don't know. Because he was super excited and all about, yes, we really, I would love to work with you and represent you. This series has done really well for us, really well. And I was visiting with several actually traditionally published. So if you've read Black Hearts, which is the Blackbeard retelling, it's on Amazon, and Now I Rise, and anyway, so I was visiting with a whole bunch of traditionally published authors at this con that I went to where I met this agent. And they make between $5,000 to $25,000.
Is this royalty or
That's their advance, and then they have to earn that advance back. Their book has to earn that much money back before they start making royalties on top of their advance. And so I was visiting with this one girl, and she was saying she'll never do traditional publishing again, and she's published by HarperCollins, because you can make so much more money if you can write a story that people really want to read. So this one went viral, and
then indie published it, just to
and
clarify.
we indie pubbed it. We pooled our platforms, so to speak. So I had an audience from this book series already, and that my co-author had an audience from her series. And so we brought that together, and I tease her and I say 1 + 1 = 1,000, because it really went much bigger than we anticipated. She writes full time. That's her job. I refuse to give up my job. My husband's like, please stop and just write. But I love what I do professionally too. So I have orphan kids basically that will be in therapy forever.
So you got to pay for them.
Right, exactly. See, this is my rationalization. I'm
Good
like,
job.
no, I have to because anyway.
That's fun.
So, but I met with an agent and we went through my manuscript and he was all about it. We've sold foreign rights to a French publisher on that series, and he will rep us for movie rights as well as foreign rights for this series. And then the other series, we had the conversation that unless the publisher is willing to give at least a 6-figure advance, I'm not willing to go traditional, because it doesn't make any sense for me financially.
Yeah.
I'll make more money doing it myself.
And you have more control,
Yep.
or do you not?
Yes, you do. You have more control. You do have to be aware of like market trends, and
Which means more responsibility.
Business.
Yeah, more responsibility.
Yeah.
So.
But you can do very well if you're,
Becca, what about your
Sorry.
process, your like submission process for getting into the
So-
anthologies?
So with that, comics are really weird and not anything like prose writing. Comics are very informal and it's a lot of who you're friends with. So I have an MFA from this art school in Savannah, and I know a lot of other professional comic writers, so we've organized our own things, but I've also had the opportunity to meet with people who work at like Viz Media or Archaea or Boom. So I have a lot of industry friends as well. But just because you're friends, it doesn't mean anything. However, I wanted to make Kidlit, specifically Kidlit with female protagonists in comic form before that became like that's kind of the it thing right now. And I was doing that in 2010. So I was sort of somebody that they would tap when they wanted like an extra story. So I've done a spread for Bravest Warriors, Search for Catbug, because I'm a watercolor artist and they wanted somebody who wasn't going to do digital. So they tapped me for that. And I've done stuff for Lego for their TMNT line, but because of NDAs, I can't tell you which ones I've done. And most of that was just because I attend conventions, I know a lot of people, I'm friends with a lot of comic people, and I'm very visible on Twitter, I'm very visible on Instagram, and I'll talk to just like anybody. Like if you're nice to me, I'll talk to you about whatever. So people think about me when they're thinking about their anthologies, and people were thinking about me in 2012 when they started doing more comics for girls. They were like, well, Becca feels really passionately about this, so let's work with her for that. And now there's a lot of younger women who are going into that, and that is phenomenal, but I don't get tapped as often as I used to. Because I'm not,
Competition.
I know, there's competition, and they're phenomenal, so what can I say? So I originally, when I was at SCAD, I was pitching Kara, and nobody was interested, because this was 2011, and nobody was doing comics about girl protagonists. People still thought nobody read books with a female protagonist, because that totally is reflected in market data, but comics is weird, like I said. And so I got really tired of pitching this comic, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I had a bunch of friends who were kind of playing around with CreateSpace and kind of playing around with Kickstarter, and they kind of helped me work through the process. And distro for self-published comics is very different than distro for self-published books. It's a lot. I know you probably do a lot of convention.
And I was saying,
distribution.
just for the audience, maybe use full words.
Sure, I'm so
Distribution.
sorry. I'm sorry.
And talk slowly and loudly.
Shush, David, shush.
I'm totally
I
kidding.
can get louder.
No,
Did you kickstart that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, because I kickstarted my first 2 books.
I'm kickstarting the second volume because, and this is crummy, I didn't trust my audience.
Oh.
I was new, I had a lot of friends, but nobody had any money. Everybody was big about talking about support and not backing it up.
Yeah,
and I was afraid, I was a chicken, and now I'm gonna put the money where the mouth is and kickstart it. And for those of you who don't know, kickstarting is a crowdfunding, so that means a bunch of people chip in to help support the work you're doing. They can
If
do
you're
$1.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky. Yeah.
Or you get nothing.
Yeah, that's also a very, I've seen some really good projects get nothing because they didn't get any support until the very last minute when everyone's like, oh, this is a thing I wish existed. Like, should have gotten in on that.
It could exist if you
Yeah,
did
it could have existed. So, next book is going to be Kickstarter, but the way you distribute comics, especially self-published comics, is Diamond is the one big distributor. You can also distribute through Amazon using CreateSpace, and you can distribute through Comixology and through Kindle, but Diamond is the one you want to go through. And the problem with Diamond is that if you have a graphic novel, you only get promoted for when you published it. Whereas like trade floppies, like what you get at a comic book store, every single time one of those 25-page pamphlets comes out, they get a new Diamond listing. So I do a lot of conventions. I table in the artist alley a lot. If you guys see my table, it looks very different from these guys' table because I'm very reliant on the illustration and art aspect as how I pay my bills. My day job is I do a YouTube channel where I teach people how to draw. I do freelance work. I do anthology work, and I draw a lot of commissions for people, so I draw a lot of portraits. That's how I pay my daily bills. Comics does not pay my daily bills.
But it's fun.
I love it.
It's fun.
Yeah, I love it.
It's like your love child.
Right. I couldn't not.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Becca, for
No
that insight
problem.
into the comic book industry. David.
So I was an independent musician, or still kind of technically am, in a band for 10 years. The most recent band and a band before that too. And so we were very, very independent. And so I came from a world where you had record labels that were just these like gigantic gatekeepers, and in order for you to make it big, you had to get on a record label, and at the same time there's this huge indie push, and you could get your music on iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff. And so we did the indie route for all that and did really, really well. And so for 10 years, having that experience, and then coming to books, I saw all this work that traditional publishing entailed, like just the amount of work having to get it to somebody. And I know a guy who got a deal, and 3 years later his book still wasn't out. And I'm just way too impatient for that. I am
You and me both, David.
a little too ADHD and impatient and all that stuff. And so I got this the surfaces done, and I kind of didn't even know what I was going to do with it. But I just did a bunch of research and found CreateSpace and got it out there, and a buddy of mine had done a con and said I should do it, and I was like, I don't know, this isn't like comic book, I don't feel like it overlays at all, and he was like, just trust me. And so that's been several years, and I do cons all the time now.
The rest is history.
Yeah, and I actually did submit this one, the manuscript, to like 100 agents, but again, the impatience took over. And I think I waited 2 months, and I got like some nibbles, but I was like, screw that. It's done. People can read it now.
Yeah.
And so maybe if I was more patient and like focused on other like non-fun things, maybe I would look at a traditional publishing. But Raye was absolutely right talking about financial stuff too. I do know people who are traditionally published who have total made $5,000 because that's what their advance was, and they still owe, money to the traditional publishing, and I've already out earned them on tiny little books that I'm selling one-on-one at cons. And so, not to say that any of us probably initially got in for the money, and obviously, it's nice to pay bills.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at
I'm in it for the money. I don't know.
when you're looking
I
at
would sell them at heartbeat, dude.
Oh yeah. I mean, okay. Let's be honest. We'll also, but no, there's a piece that's about the money
Authors have to eat
when it's
too.
working, because you have to eat. But there's this piece that if it's all about the money, it's going to be a really, really hard thing to break into. And so it has to be about the passion. It has to be because it's something that you just can't not do.
If you want to do it, then you gotta tell it. You gotta
Yeah.
tell the story.
Yeah.
Mark, what about you? Is all your stuff indie published, or do you have some traditionally published titles?
It's kind of a long, sorted story.
Well, can we make it a little bit shorter and not quite as sorted because we have
Censor it and.
Like I mentioned, I've been writing since I was that young person's age. And, well, I finally got old enough and I wrote a book. And actually, what happened originally is I wrote short stories. But the problem is I never finished them because they were always 20, 30, 40,000 words, and that's not a very good short story. And somebody finally,
novellas, yeah.
so somebody finally told me, why don't you write a novel? I can't write a novel. But I started looking at my files, and I'm like, well, okay. And I started writing one, and all of a sudden I wrote it. And I'm like, well, how did that happen? So I finished my book. I have a book, and I went out and said, no, publish it for me. No. Publish it. No. Publish it for me. No answer. Well, that's not good. Traditional publishing, when I started looking at it, was saturated, I guess was the word you could
Was
say.
that in the 90s, 90s?
Early 90s,
Okay.
yeah. It was completely depressing. Once I accumulated enough rejection letters to decorate a wall, I decided I was entirely in the wrong industry. And I basically stopped writing seriously. But I got married not too long after that. My wife told me that if I don't write, she's going to kill me because I'm a miserable you-know-what if I don't write. And as either that or drill a hole in my head so the words would come out. And that's not very socially acceptable either. So I went back to writing, and I realized I wanted to have a book. I wanted to at least have a book, so I went to Vanity Press, which thank God is mostly dead. Gave them a big stack of money, and of course they gave me a book, and they didn't do much with it because basically they used the manuscript that I sent them.
Was that still in the 90s?
Yeah, still in the 90s.
So self-publishing wasn't really there yet.
Yes.
And just to clarify, vanity press is a term where you pay someone else to do all the work of packaging your book that now most any authors do themselves,
Yep.
or they contract out.
Yeah.
But vanity presses are not publishers. They don't promote your book and pay you royalties. They just package it if you pay them to do it. So it's not something that any author would recommend.
Technically, they do pay you royalties because what they do is it's listed as they're the publisher. They put it
So
out.
they do keep part of royalties?
Oh, yeah.
Heck, oh my gosh,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
never do vanity
Well,
press.
the original traditional vanity press was like you said. They would ship you a pallet of books and you're on your own.
Yeah.
Well, near the end of that period, I was with one that was kind of straddling that thing. So they would publish your book, they'd put it on Amazon, they would sell you copies of your book at a ridiculous freaking price, and then you were on your own. So it was almost worse in a lot of ways. So that didn't work out, and I had a great release, and I think I sold a few copies to some relatives and one or two copies here or there. I think the highest royalty check I ever got from them was under $6, which represented about 10 books actually.
You did half pizza. It was
Half
awesome.
a
Yeah, that was about it. And I gave up on it. Then about a few years later, around 1998, my son was born. Having a child really kind of invigorated me to be creative again because I started telling him stories and things. And my wife was saying, you need to write these down because you're scaring the hell out of our kid. So I was like, okay, I'll write the stories instead. And then I discovered Amazon was out there. So I went to them and started self-publishing to great ignorance also. Nobody basically bought those either. Well, I did sell a few. Actually, some of my greatest fans now are ones that found my very first book, and they're still my fans. So it's kind of cool. There's about 6 of them. I call them my super fans. And but they gave me enough encouragement to keep going. So fast forward now to about 8 years ago, and a small indie publisher bought my rights to that series. He gave them a bit of a makeover and reissued them, and I started seeing some sales. So the first book was reissued, good sale. Second book, not so good. Third book, still not so good. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? This was supposed to go up in a series. He says, write something else. I said, okay, I'll write the 4th book. He says, no, write something else. I'm like, I don't want to write anything else. I want to write this. Then I had the idea for the zombie apocalypse. I saw 28 days later and went, I can do this. And I saw how popular Walking the Dead was because it was in its stride. So I came out with my book, A Time to Die, which was the alien plague zombie apocalypse bestseller.
Nice.
Dragon Award nominee, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. Got my first royalty check that was 4 figures.
Wow, was that before or after World War Z came out?
No, that was after.
That was after.
This is what I do
writing the
conferences
coattails of World War Z?
well, I do conferences with my co-writer, the co-creator of the Four Horsemen universe, Chris Kennedy, where we talk about it.
You're in the Four Horsemen universe.
Yes,
I'm
I
sorry,
am.
I'm interrupting you, Mark.
That's okay.
I like no Bane people, and so I was like, Four Horsemen.
I'm about to probably have a contract.
That is
That's
so
exciting.
cool.
That's the end of the story.
Congratulations.
So we came out with the zombie apocalypse one and everything, and it started really selling well. I got nominated for that, and then I had the idea for the Four Horsemen universe, and it kind of started out as much more as just the overweight nerd kid discovers alien drone technology and saves the universe. And I started kind of writing it as what I usually do.
Spoiler alert.
That's not in the book, actually. I'm what's known as a pantser when I write. There are these people that have these detailed outlines, everything in their book, and they stick to it. I do that, and then throw it away and write something else entirely. So the book was very different and halfway done, and my partner now, Chris Kennedy, at a convention called In Conjunction in Indianapolis, I talked to him, he'd read some of my stuff from my other series, and he said, what else are you doing? And I said, well, I'm doing this. He said, well, give it to me and I'll read it. I'm like, you don't want to read one of my manuscripts. So he took it anyway, and he read it, and he comes the next grade, he comes, you know what, I got some bad news for you. I'm like, come on. He said, I loved it. So he had a small publishing company. He published a few people and himself, and he basically bought the rights to all of my books. We started writing this series. That was in 2 years ago. December 21st, 2016 was the first book. That first year, after we came up with a total of 6 books that year, we sold over 100,000 copies in our first year. Everything I've written since then has been a bestseller. We cut a deal with Bain a few months ago, where now they're going to put our books up on their website for Chris Kennedy Publishing. And I've talked with the chief editor, Toni Weisskopf. She wants a hard science fiction novel that I've been working on. So that's not official, but hopefully I'm actually going to have one of those deals.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
I've wanted to be trad my whole life. That's the thing. I'm happy with what I'm doing. It's paying the bills. In fact, we had an offer to go with Bain and give them everything, and they said, no problem. You won't see your first check for a year.
Yeah,
That's a
really drawbacks of
problem.
traditional
Yeah, right.
publishing.
Just don't eat for a year.
That's exactly. And I had just quit. I'm like, oh, thanks for the timing. Bang, you know. So we're slowly moving more in that direction. We're going to keep doing this because here's the deal: indie publishing is nimble, and in this business right now, that means a lot. Because if you look at sales, you look at Amazon. Amazon sells 75% of all ebooks sold. And we're talking worldwide. That's absolutely huge. Their Kindle Unlimited program, which you put your book on and anybody can read for free if you've heard of it. As a writer, you get half a cent a page. That's it? Yeah, I made more than $4,000 last month on half a cent a page. So, if you realize when you look at this and you compare what they sell, what does Kindle sell, what does Amazon sell, 55% last quarter was indies. Us. 55%. The traditional publishers got the other 45%. That's huge.
Yep.
That's absolutely huge.
And in the timeline, I mean, you've covered a couple decades. 20 years ago, indie was
The
not.
technology wasn't there for it.
The technology wasn't there, and it wasn't respected. Like
That's what I was gonna say.
It was
It's
the-
like, you're
the
not a
vast
real writer,
majority of what
you're not
succeeded.
in one of these things.
you're a wannabe, you're a hobbyist.
But yeah.
Have you heard of Larry Correa? Any of you? He writes the Monster
Oh yeah,
International
I know
series.
Larry. Yeah.
He came out with his first book as self-published. He was at the very beginning of Amazon. And it did really well because he had a bunch of gun nerd friends that all bought his book.
Because it's all about shooting monsters with guns.
It is, pretty much. Well, ours is kill aliens, get paid. His thing is danger looms, man up, kill it, get paid. That was his thing. So it's hidden world. It's like Harry Potter. So really there's monsters everywhere and nobody knows about it because there's a government agency that suppresses the news. But there's private contractors who can shoot these monsters and get paid from the government to shoot them. That's his entire universe. He sells a boatload of those books.
And a boat toad as
A
well.
boat toad, that's right. I had to write that
What
down.
is a boat toad exactly?
I don't know,
answer that question.
but there's probably Puff on it from Monster
Probably.
Hunter's World. Yeah.
Probably.
Anyway, that's my story. It's went from one into the other. I'm really at that point in my career, which I'm really excited with the way things are going. I love writing. I'm really getting my speed and my pace going. I can sit down every day and write 3,000 to 5,000 words. And I wrote most of my writing career earlier when I was writing after work and at lunch. I was thrilled when I broke 1,000 for a day.
Yeah.
You know, now I can do that before I finish my bagel. So, you know, it's things are evolving a little bit. But if you want to write, you've got to write every single day. I tell fans who are out there in the audience, I want to write, but I don't have time. I'm like, can you write 500 words a day? Really? That's 180,000 words a year. That's 2 books.
That's true for comics too. You need to put the time in every day or you're never going to have that.
Just a
growth.
little bit, you know, but you make an excuse, write it at lunch, write it after work. When you get home, the kids are in bed, take an hour and write.
And when you say I don't have time, are you watching TV? Are you playing a video
You're
game?
on social media.
Social
you're out
media.
there,
Yeah, but there's an argument on Facebook, you know.
Yeah, this is really important.
Now, do y'all write like pen and paper? Because that's what I do, or
Dear
do
God,
you do
no.
computer?
My
I love
partner,
that.
though, he goes to Chick-fil-A with a notebook and writes 2,000 words on it. Then I do that, but then if I copy it, it's something else entirely.
And
So
then,
I just
that's kind of my editing time. You know,
For me,
take
the
yellow pad
transcribing
with the
process is
number
too
2
annoying
pencil, you
for
know,
me.
and things
Me
like
too.
that. But that's just the way I grew up. That's what.
If any of
That's
you
what
try
it works.
Dragon,
But then I like computer.
I haven't tried that program. I do dictate on my phone sometimes. If I go on a walk in the morning, sometimes I'll dictate during that or during a car
Okay.
ride. Sometimes but yeah, I need to get into dictating more because it's faster. But I
David
just haven't-
Weber writes everything on that. And
Yeah, I heard that.
He writes a ton. His productivity is tripled when he started using that.
Yeah.
And I had lunch with him a while ago and talked to him about how he does it, and it just, I was like, I got more and more depressed the farther he went. Well, I got these files for this, and every book I write is 120 megabytes now, and I'm like, because I use Google Docs for everything. So,
Yeah.
so it's on all my computers instantly, and I haven't lost a word since I did that. And I'm thinking to myself, 100 megabytes per file. See, I already have a 44 gigabyte Google Docs file. This is not a good idea. Because when I write, what I do now is this one of those little pro tips. Every time I write each day, I rename the file for that day and save the old one and throw it in an archive file. Saved my rear end 100 times. By being able to go back to it and realize I had screwed something up, I deleted like 4 chapters in the book once. I got to the end of it, I'm like, where the hell's that whole section? Went back a week ago, oh, there it is. So,
Very nice.
yeah.
Real quick question, Mark, do you have an agent with Bain, or are you just straight you and Bain? So just to kind of clarify, because we don't have a lot of, I've done more research maybe in traditional publishing, even though I'm not traditionally published at this point, but usually you do need an agent for, for big publishers.
If you're new to this, I completely
Yeah.
advise you to do it because you've got to be really careful.
Yeah.
Contrast can be big. You know, we own your book for 25 years, and they have no obligation. I have a friend who did that. They signed a deal, and they've had the book with them for 10 years, and it's gone. They
Yeah.
have all these ideas they can't write in it because the company owns their book.
So Bain is one of the few companies, one of the few larger publishers I've heard of that other authors who are published with them would say they really respect their authors and they're probably not going to screw you over. But at the same time, Bain is a company who needs to make money for itself.
They're
and
in
that's
their
its
own
job.
interests first, not yours.
Exactly.
This is true.
So generally, just for a little word on traditional publishing, if you want to go big publisher as opposed to small indie publishing, small press publishing,
Yeah. That's what we are now.
you really do need to start researching agents, find an agent who likes the kind of thing that you want to write, and you really need to have pretty much a completed manuscript to pitch to an agent because they want to see results. They don't want to see an idea because
The
they
only
get
ones they
ideas.
buy from are big guys. Like John Ringo walks in and says, I have an idea. Tony at Bain just says, okay, write it.
Yeah, exactly.
Contract, here you
Exactly.
go.
That's true for comics as well. What they want is a synopsis and generally the first chapter or your most interesting
Well, they want to know that
chapter.
you have the rest,
Correct,
too.
yes, that's why they want the
Yeah.
synopsis of the
Yeah.
whole story, because most of us will write plot form, which is a little bit, and also if you fill it out too much, if you write too much, they may be less likely to take you, because that's more work for them, because with a drawn page, that's more work to revise than
Yeah.
a platform script
Lots of
or
kids on this
something.
Yeah, but comics would be a little bit different from the book. With most agents, if they like your first 10 pages or first chapter, they want to see the rest of the book. So if you don't have a book yet, right now you want to focus on writing every day, get the book written, and try and spend some time researching publishing. Writer's Market is what I would recommend looking into. It is a yearly book that they put out talking about mostly traditional writing, but I think they've got some stuff on indie, and they've got big indexes of publishers and of literary agents. So basically it's like your go-to source for who's who in the publishing business. But Writer's Market, you can get an ebook form, you can get paperback form. That's what kind of first got me in the know about how to publish. That was a really great question. Thanks for kind of opening the floor for us to discuss that.
There's one other thing too to really remember. If any publisher ever says, give me money, walk away.
Well, that's basically that's vanity. A legit
But there's some small
publisher,
press that'll do that too. They'll say, you know, for $2,500 will get you going.
legit publishers do not ask for your money. They say, we want your book, we will publish it for you, here's your royalty scale. This is where we're going to pay you for royalties. I want to open it up. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I just want to open it up to see if there were any other questions. If not, we can totally talk about this more, but I just want to check because we had some new people come in. Do you guys have any questions for any of the authors up here, or any topics you guys would like to discuss? I see a hand in the back. Yes, sweetie.
I am a writer,
Mhm.
aspiring writer. Do you guys have any advice to me? Like
Yes, we do.
You have too much advice.
Too much advice.
I mean, I think-
So I'm going to start at this end, but Mark, you got to be quick, right? You
I'll
got like
try.
10 minutes left.
That's my number one. Do you want to write for yourself or do you want somebody else to do all the stuff for you?
I want other people to see my work.
Okay.
Well, sorry. I think Mark, clarify that.
Well, do you want to be indie or do you want to be traditional
Do you
published?
want to publish your own work, or do you want someone else to publish it for you?
Honestly, to me, it doesn't really matter as long as people enjoy my work.
Well, then your best bet as a starter is to go indie, and if you want to do that, It's absolutely great. She mentioned a number of other sources. There's a few books out there. Find yourself a book on self-publishing. There's a bunch of them on Amazon. My partner, Chris Kennedy, writes one. I'm not going to shill his book, though. Whenever you do find one, just make sure it's got some good reviews and you like what you see. And for that matter, use Kindle Unlimited and read the book a little bit and see if you like it, because you can get some free previews that way. Once you've got that, just follow my key points, like I said. Write every day, first of all. Second, if you're going to self-publish, pay somebody to edit it. It hurts, but do it. And 3, actually pay for a cover, too. Go to 99 Designs or one of these places and get a relatively inexpensive cover so it looks good. Because look at all our covers. All of our covers look good, and that's what sells the book. The number one thing on Amazon. If the cover sucks, nobody's going to buy it. It doesn't matter if it's the greatest book in the world.
People do judge books by cover.
And
They really do.
And people
Yes, they
should judge books by their covers
Because it's a
the
sign of
cover-
commitment to your work.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my suggestion.
Thank you, Mark. I'm so impressed at how short that was. Very impressed.
I tried.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to write, there are so many things you can focus on and worry about, publishing, agents. But if you want to write, don't lose the love of writing. A huge part about it is if you want people to read your work, you're going to take a lot of criticism. You're going to hear a lot of people that don't like it.
1-star review.
And you're going to get 1-star reviews from people who didn't even read it.
I just got one of those yesterday.
Yeah, that's when you contact Amazon and tell them to take it down, because they will.
Yeah, and they will,
That's
and they
not,
will.
That's not a.
But when you get when you get in the hundreds of reviews, actually, 1 or 2 1-stars is okay.
Yeah, you want to.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah.
120 reviews, all 5
People,
stars.
people can absolutely have their opinion. That's the thing. And part of it is you kind of have to have a thick skin to say, this is me. This is the thing that I wrote. If you don't like it, that's cool. But at the same time, you have to be able to say, as far as editing process goes, get people's opinions who say, you know what, I like this, but this part needs to change.
Yeah.
And it's at first it can be hard to hear somebody say the thing that you think is perfect, the thing that you think is your soul on a piece of paper needs to change. It's really easy to get defensive and say, screw you, this book is perfect and you know what you're talking about. Readers know what they talk about.
Yep.
Some people are mean, and that's just it. And the internet can be scary. And so my advice is literally just write, let it come out. The more you write, the more you're going to write, and the better you're going to be a writer.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to speak to comics because that's what I do, but it's not that different. Find a group of people you trust who care about you or your work. Not will lie to you and tell you what you want to hear. Not will brush you off to get rid of you, but genuinely are invested in helping you make the best work you can, and do the same for them. Because I'll tell you, my fiance gives some really harsh critiques. He's made me cry because he was right.
My husband makes me cry too.
And it was a lot of work that I had to like rewrite an entire chapter because he was like, this doesn't work. And I was like, I've already thumbnailed it. And he's like, you need to rework it. And then
my wife's line, what the hell were you thinking when you wrote that?
My other beta reader said, see, I don't tell my beta readers I have 2. I'd like to have 5, but people flake. I don't tell them what the other ones say until I get their critique. And if I get 3 consensuses, then I know I have to change it no matter how much it hurts.
I used the Minority Report.
It's worked. And my other beta reader said exactly the same thing he said. So I had to redo the whole chapter and it was painful. But I really appreciate that they put me through that pain because they genuinely care about the story I'm telling and the world I want to build, and it makes it a stronger story. So having people who are willing to point out the flaws, who love your work enough to tell you when you suck, is very important. Being part of a community where you can support, listen to, encourage each other without just fluffing each other and lying to each other is also really important, because I'll tell you, one of the most encouraging things I've heard from another comic artist was she was talking about what a hard day she had and how she'd sent out to all these agents, and she's a stronger artist than I am, and how she never hears back. And knowing that someone who I really admire and who I think of as a stronger artist is having the same problems I'm having gives me the fire to keep pushing, because it's like, well, if it's hard for them, of course it's going to be hard for me. I'm not the sort of person who, when things are hard, I just give up. I usually get like really angry about it, and then I like yell a whole lot, and then I sit down and make a list of like what I can do, and then I try to fix it. So community, whether you're comic people, your prose people, your poetry people, that is super important. For me, because I'm Kidlit, I'm a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. They don't have a lot of support for comic people right now, but they are trying to improve. The Middle Tennessee chapter seems really good on moving forward. forward. So that's also been really great, and I've met a lot of people. And talk to other types of writers. Don't just talk to people in your genre, because sometimes there can be that competitive edge where you might get bad advice because it didn't work for them, but maybe it works for you. Times change, people change, what people are hiring for, and we talked about how it was a business earlier. You are selling yourself often as much as you're selling the book. So you need to be nice, you need to be friendly, you need to be personable, you need to treat every customer who comes to the table like they're a king or a queen or a prince or a princess. You need to really be kind and nice to as many people as you can be, because you never know who is an editor, who is an agent.
She's right, especially if you're doing con. How many times have you been doing con where guys got their books and he's sitting at his table looking at people like, what do you want?
Yes.
You know?
Yep.
Be welcoming for crying out
Especially
loud.
at cons, you don't know who's walking around, and you can't judge. You can't judge a book by its cover. When it comes to
What you did there, I see it.
working professionals, you can't judge, because
Don't judge a person by their looks.
some of the
There we
people
go.
who I was like, there is no way they're going to be interested in a watercolor kidlit comic about an 11-year-old little girl, like big grizzly looking dudes with motorcycle jackets, have 16 grandkids and they want to buy 8 books.
He's
because
secretly
they're-
a furry, actually.
Could be. Could be.
We're not going there. We're not going there.
But if they got the money to buy my book, we're good.
Oh, yeah.
So like, don't judge your customers.
Everybody's
by their
everybody's
appearance
good.
either.
Everybody's money is green.
Thanks
That's
so
right.
much, Becca. Yeah, community is really important.
And
Raye.
is there a writer group here at the library?
I think there is.
On and off.
Okay.
April,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah,
sure,
on and
but I'm
off.
sure the library staff would know more about what resources are available. So maybe talk to them after the panel. Raye.
Yeah, I would tell you, so if you want to write in a genre, you need to read what is selling in that genre, and all genres have tropes, and you can break the trope, but you have to know the trope really, really well to be able to break it well without it really hurting you. So the more I would tell you, if you want to be a writer, then you write, and if you want to be a writer, you need to be reading. And if you want to be an indie writer, you need to network within the indie community. So you find successful indie writers. Almost always at the end of our books, we'll give shout outs to our cover designers, to our editors. Sometimes I'm really, I don't want to share because then I can't get in to my editor. You know, I'm like, how soon can you take my manuscript? And she's like, 6 months. I'm like, that's not gonna work for me. So sometimes we hoard, and most of the time we share. Most of the time I do share, and most of the time it bites me in the butt. But that's also part of community. So I will tell you, most of what I learned, I actually learned in Nashville. When I started writing my book, my neighbor told me about a con that had just started, and it was an indie con. And I went and I learned a ton, and I still did nothing with it for 2 years. And 2 years later, I finally jumped. So I think that networking is really important and learning a lot. There's a lot of groups on Facebook that are fabulous resources. Michael Anderle, he makes $2 million+ a year. And he's indie, and he has a writers group, and it's all about indie writing.
Is that the 20 books to 50K?
20 books to 50K. And
On Facebook.
it's a great resource. And it's not a lot of fluff for frills, like, at all. But the information is solid. And he does a con, literally, he makes no money, he does it out of the goodness of his heart because he wants other people to be successful.
Yeah.
And he'll tell you this won't work, and this will work, and this is how you want to do it, and he's usually
Awesome.
right.
Thanks so much,
So,
Raye.
yeah.
They've pretty much covered everything, not leaving me anything to say, which is good.
There is
because
no
we're
other
working
advice
with professionals.
possible.
But I guess I would just add a couple things. One of my favorite quotes is, if you can quit writing, do it. If you can't, you're a writer. That is to say, it is okay to not be a writer, to just write because you enjoy writing. But if you find yourself unable to stop writing, you just keep coming back to it, that probably means that you have, I wouldn't say what it takes, but you have the kind of passion that will last and will take you through the hard times, because publishing is really hard. It doesn't matter what route you take. It's tough. I cry so much, like all the time. Like I cry when I get critiqued.
But you're pregnant.
And then all right. Even before I was pregnant. But you know, you get back up again. You keep going. So obviously you have to read and you have to write a lot. And it's okay in the first couple of years when you're kind of figuring things out to focus on getting your book written. But on the other side of things, they've kind of touched on it, but you have to accept that publishing is a business. Writing is a passion and an art, but publishing is a business. And if you don't treat it like a business, it doesn't matter how good your book is, people are not going to see it. It's not as much fun as the writing. I mean, I kind of like it. Extrovert, so it's a little bit different for me. So the business part isn't really the fun part, but if you care about people your book reaching people, you have to be a professional and research the business and find out how to be a good publisher, whether you're pitching to traditional publishers or doing stuff yourself. You need to research marketing. Like it's legit. If you don't know how books sell, where they sell, and why books sell, then you won't know how to make your book, put your book in a place where people are going to find it. Because people are out there and they want to read your book, but it's such a big world and such a crowded marketplace, it's hard to find things. So like in the past year, my goal was to start advertising, like paying for ads. And you might think, oh, well, I can't be a real writer and pay for ads because that means I've failed. I must not have a good enough book if I have to actually pay for ads. No, that's crap. That's not true.
That's the huge authors that you know,
no,
because
exactly.
there are ads
Yeah,
that are purchased.
the authors who are multi-millionaires are because traditional publishers paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for marketing. So it's no different for you. Obviously, you can't do the same scale, but if you don't research the business of publishing and how people market and what works and start marketing your own book, even if it's really small at first, like a couple dollars a day or something, people aren't going to find out about your book, and that's fine. It's not your fault. It doesn't mean you didn't write a good book. It's just the way the world works and the way the internet works. So
Kindle ads are really cheap, actually, too. You can start with a very small budget.
You can start really cheap. So I guess, you know, beyond just the writing part, be willing and be ready. It doesn't matter if it's traditional or not. If it's traditional, you still need to advertise yourself, because often traditional publishers will not advertise for you these days. They'll just publish it and you hope it does well. And that's why a lot of traditional authors are getting burned, because the traditional publishers aren't putting as much
Well, they'll
into
put in $5,000 or $10,000.
But then if it doesn't do well, they'll drop you because you didn't make a profit for them, and that's the end of the story.
Indie writers who put in $5,000-$10,000 on their own work usually is more powerful
Oh yeah, they
than
do a lot better.
the traditional publisher
Yeah.
putting in $5,000-$10,000.
So anyway, just treat the publishing as a business. Write for creativity purposes, but if you're going to publish, it's a business, and you need to treat it as such. We are out of time, but thank you all so much for being here, and let's give our authors a hand. We all have cards, we have books, and our tables out there. Please come by and talk to us, grab our cards. I'm sure we'd all be happy to like chat more on social media or email, so thanks for coming out, guys.